Welcome everyone, it's Mr. Wolf here, and in this video I'm going to be really reviewing, but also introducing some parts of planning investigations. All right, so let's start with the review, independent versus dependent variable. So our independent variable, all right, is always the variable, it's always our potential cause. It's the variable that we're manipulating, all right? And the dependent variable is the possible effect. It's the variable that we are measuring to see if it is affected or not. Right, so maybe an example experiment is and we did this at the beginning of the year, what effect does fatigue have on free throw shooting? And so we can manipulate fatigue, right? We can make someone more tired by having them just run a bunch, and then we could have them shoot free throws and then measure how well they shoot free throws, right? See if it's affected. Now, we also have parts of experiment of control versus constants. And even though this is review, still super important, and especially for this unit that we're doing on planning investigations, where we're going to be trying to critique experiments, we absolutely want to be paying attention to if these are present in experiments. So our control group is really our comparison group. All right. Many times it's the group that is the normal condition, right? And we compare the control group to our experimental group, or really the group with the independent variable, to see if there's a difference or not. So if I'm doing the experiment, does fatigue affect free throws, right? I would want to shoot free throws before running, right? Before being fatigued, so I could always compare it back to that. Right, now it sounds similar, right? Control constants, but completely different. This is a different aspect of an experiment. So constants are variables that stay the same in an experiment, right? The only thing that we want changing is our independent variable in an experiment. So some example could be, the same person shooting, the same basketball hoop, same time in between free throws, and there's countless others. All right. So this is a little bit of a review too, but we are going to be paying a lot more attention to these in these units. So there's definitely going to be more of a focus on these in our new planning investigations unit. So sample size. This is just how many or how much of something you're testing, right? So in the experiments that we ran at the beginning of the year, or that we used as an example, does fatigue affect free throw shooting? And the experiment that I gave an example for would be one participant shooting free throws, me. That sample size of 1. All right, let's say we did this with the whole class, sample size of 24-ish, all right? So then we have trials, all right, kind of connected to sample size, but it's how many times we're going to repeat that experimental condition. So for instance, even though there's just a sample size of 1 with me, all right, when we kind of designed this experiment at the beginning of the year, we'd say, all right, well, I'll do this experiment, right, 3 different times, right, to get more data points. Maybe I'm running an experiment with plants, and I have each condition, but each condition I'm going to have 10 trials, 10 different beans, so 10 different experiments in this case, all right? So then there's going to be the time frame, which is just the overall time period that we're going to either complete a trial or the whole experiment, and there's definitely some leeway here. So sometimes, we could say maybe for this experiment, could take 3 days if we wanted to do each trial on a different day. Or we might want to do it just based on logistics, just do it within a class period, so maybe just only 20, 30 minutes. So there's a range with time frame. All right, then we have our method of collecting data. We've talked about this before, all right? It's just what we're using to collect data, all right? Or specifically what we are using to measure our dependent variable. What are you using to collect data? To measure your dependent variable. All right. So for example, all right, if we did an experiment, does surface area affect diffusion? We're not directly measuring diffusion, right? We're going to measure glucose to see how much it diffuses to measure diffusion. So our method of collecting data there was the glucose strips from our past unit, all right? If we go back to first semester, right, that's the effect of, let's say, temperature on photosynthesis. Well, we don't just there's no photosynthesis measuring device. We just measure oxygen, and that tells us if photosynthesis is happening. All right, so that's our method of measuring our dependent variable. Now here is a new term, all right, that is connected to the method of collecting data, all right, which is looking at validity. It's essentially saying how well is this method of collecting data? How good is it at actually measuring your dependent variable? So here's an example of high validity, right, of good validity in an experiment. Let's say we're using an oxygen sensor to measure photosynthesis. Oxygen's a product of photosynthesis. Yeah, that's a good way to measure photosynthesis. All right, but let's say we're doing a different experiment. We're trying to see the effect of some variable on intelligence, and we're trying to measure intelligence. And we give people just one of those word searches where you're just trying to find the word. All right, I'd say that's pretty low validity, right? How well you do on a word search, it's probably not very indicative of how smart or how intelligent you actually are. All right. So thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, wait. Oh, super important thing last point is ethics. All right. So this is getting to the point of getting around the area of, this is the concern with the right versus wrong in experimental design. So, although an experiment might be interesting, is it right to perform? Who benefits from it? Most importantly, who could it possibly harm? Or what animals might we possibly be harming, right? So things that we want to consider when we're doing science in the real world. Thanks for watching, everyone.